Life is a solo journey. From the moment you're born to your last breath, you're the only constant. Sure, people come and go, but at the end of the day, it's just you. And that's not something to fear, it's something to celebrate. Think about it. Every great achievement in history came from someone who dared to stand alone, someone who chose to step away from the crowd and chart their own path, someone who understood that true power comes from within, not from others. You're here today because you want to succeed. You want to make your mark on the world. But let me tell you something. Success isn't found in the company you keep. It's found in the quiet moments of solitude, in the hours spent honing your craft when no one's watching. Friends are nice. They can make you laugh, offer a shoulder to cry on. But can they help you reach your full potential? Can they push you to your limits and beyond? More often than not, they're just distractions. Pleasant distractions, but distractions nonetheless. Now, I'm not saying you should become a hermit. I'm saying you need to learn to be comfortable with yourself, to find joy and fulfillment in your own company. Because when you do, you unlock a world of possibilities. Isolation isn't about being lonely. It's about creating space for growth. It's about cutting out the noise and focusing on what truly matters. It's about becoming the best version of yourself, free from the expectations and judgments of others. Think of your mind as a garden. Every thought, every idea is a seed. But for these seeds to grow, they need space. They need nurturing. And sometimes they need to be protected from outside influences that might stunt their growth. Remember, at the end of the day, you're the one who has to live with your choices. You're the one who has to face yourself in the mirror. And when you're truly focused on your goals, when you're making progress towards your dreams, that reflection will smile back at you with pride. And when you know yourself, when you're comfortable in your own skin, you become unstoppable. Because then it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It doesn't matter if people understand your choices or support your dreams. You have the inner strength to keep going no matter what. Steve Jobs, for instance, was known for his intense focus and his ability to shut out distractions. He understood that to create something truly revolutionary. He needed to ignore the noise of the outside world and trust his own vision. Or consider writers like J.K. Rowling or Stephen King. They didn't create their magical worlds in bustling cafes or at social gatherings. They retreated into solitude, allowing their imaginations to run wild without interruption. Even in the world of sports, where teamwork is often glorified, the true champions are those who put in the extra hours alone. They're the ones practicing their shots long after everyone else has gone home. They're the ones reviewing game tapes, while others are out partying. The truth is that success is an inside job. It starts with you, in those quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts. It's about having the courage to listen to your inner voice, even when it's telling you something different from what everyone else is saying. When you're constantly surrounded by others, their thoughts, their opinions, their energy, it's like planting your seeds in overcrowded soil. There's no room to breathe, no room to expand. But in isolation, that's when your ideas can truly take root and flourish. Remember, the greatest inventions, the most profound works of art, the revolutionary ideas that changed the world, they all came from individuals who weren't afraid to be alone with their thoughts. Einstein didn't formulate the theory of relativity at a party. Mozart didn't compose his symphonies in a crowded room. They found power in solitude. Now, you might be thinking, but isn't success all about networking? About knowing the right people? And sure, connections can open doors, but it's what you do once those doors are open that counts. And that, my friend, is all on you. Success isn't handed out like party favors at a social gathering. It's earned through hard work, dedication, and an unwavering focus on your goals. And more often than not, that means saying no to social invitations. It means choosing a night in with your dreams over a night out with friends. It's not always easy. Humans are social creatures by nature. We crave connection, validation. But true strength comes from being able to stand on your own 2 feet, from finding validation within yourself rather than seeking it from others. Think about the last time you had a brilliant idea. Where were you? Chances are you weren't in the middle of a crowded room. You were probably alone, in the shower on a solitary walk or lying in bed at night. That's because creativity thrives in solitude. It needs space to breathe, to expand, to take shape. Success requires sacrifice, and sometimes that sacrifice is social time. It's choosing to spend your evening working on your goals instead of going out with friends. It's waking up early to pursue your passions while others are still sleeping. It's being okay with missing out on social events because you're investing in yourself. Isolation allows you to develop a deep understanding of yourself. It gives you the opportunity to explore your thoughts, your feelings, your motivations without any external influence. It's in these moments of solitude that you can truly figure out what you want from life. Now, you might be wondering, but won't I get lonely? And yes, there might be moments of loneliness, but there's a big difference between being lonely and being alone. Loneliness comes from a lack of connection with yourself. When you're truly comfortable in your own company, when you're focused on your goals and passionate about your path, loneliness fades away. Instead, you'll find a sense of peace, a sense of purpose that no amount of socializing can provide. You'll discover a well of strength within yourself that you never knew existed, and that strength will carry you through any challenge, any obstacle that stands in your way. Think about it this way: every minute you spend trying to please others, trying to fit in, trying to be what someone else wants you to be, is a minute taken away from becoming who you're meant to be. It's a minute that could have been spent honing your skills, pursuing your passions, inching closer to your dreams. In our hyper-connected world, it's easy to fall into the trap of constant communication. We're always just a text away, always available. But this constant connectivity comes at a cost. It fragments our attention, dilutes our focus. It keeps us tethered to the expectations and demands of others, pulling us away from our own path. Isolation gives you the gift of uninterrupted thought. It allows you to dive deep into your work, to enter that state of flow where time seems to stand still and your best work emerges. It's in these moments of intense focus that breakthroughs happen, that innovations are born. Isolation isn't about cutting yourself off from the world. It's about creating the space you need to hear your own thoughts, to nurture your own dreams. It's about building a foundation of self-reliance and self-trust that will serve you throughout. Now, I'm not saying you should never relax or have fun. Downtime is important, but true relaxation, true rejuvenation often comes from solitude as well. It's in those quiet moments free from external pressures and expectations that by embracing isolation, you give yourself permission to fail. You create a safe space where you can take risks, where you can push your boundaries without fear of judgment. And it's in this space that true innovation happens. By focusing on yourself, by honing your skills in solitude, you're actually creating more opportunities. You're becoming the kind of person that others seek out. You're developing the kind of expertise that opens doors. Think about it this way. Would you rather be the person always chasing opportunities, always trying to be in the right place at the right time, or would you rather be the person that opportunities come to because you've developed something unique and valuable? By embracing isolation, you're training yourself to be self-motivated. You're learning to push yourself to be your own taskmaster. And this is a skill that will serve you well in any endeavor you choose to pursue. By spending time alone, by learning to trust your own thoughts and instincts, you develop the courage to venture into uncharted territory. You learn to embrace the discomfort of not knowing, trusting that your focus and dedication will lead you to new discoveries. By developing your skills, by pursuing your passions with intensity, you're actually preparing yourself to give more to others. Because the more you grow, the more you have to offer, the more you develop your unique talents, the more value you can bring to the world. Think about a time when you were so engrossed in a task that you lost track of time. Maybe you were writing or painting or solving a complex problem. That state of flow, that deep engagement with your work, is one of the most fulfilling experiences you can have. And it often happens when you're alone, free from distractions. By embracing isolation, you're giving yourself the gift of these moments. You're creating space for deep work, for the kind of intense focus that leads to mastery. And in doing so, you're not just working towards success. You're finding joy and fulfillment in the journey itself. Now, you might be wondering, but what about creativity? Don't we need input from others to be creative? And yes, exposure to different ideas can spark creativity, but true creativity, groundbreaking creativity, often requires, think about some of the most creative people in history. They didn't come up with their ideas in brainstorming sessions or group meetings. They had moments of insight in solitude, often after long periods of intense focus on a problem. By embracing isolation, you're learning to be comfortable with silence. You're creating space for your own thoughts to emerge, for your intuition to speak. And in doing so, you're tapping into a wellspring of wisdom that's often drowned out by the noise of social interaction. By embracing isolation, you're giving yourself the gift of authenticity. You're creating space to explore who you really are, what you truly want, without the influence of others' opinions or societal expectations. And this authenticity is incredibly powerful. It's what allows you to stand out in a world of conformity, to make a unique contribution that only you can make. When you're constantly surrounded by others, you're bombarded by their thoughts, their opinions, their energy. It's hard to hear your own voice amidst all that noise, but in isolation, that's when you can truly listen to yourself. That's when you can tap into your innermost desires, your true passions. Now, I'm not saying you should never collaborate or seek advice. There's value in different perspectives, in combining ideas. But true collaboration, meaningful collaboration, comes from a place of individual strengths. It happens when two are more self-assured. Focused individuals come together, each bringing their unique insights to the table. The problem is many people use socializing as a crutch. They surround themselves with others to avoid facing their own thoughts, their own fears. They use the noise of social interaction to drown out the voice of their own ambitions. But in doing so, they're robbing themselves of the opportunity for true growth. When you're alone, there's nowhere to hide. You're forced to confront your doubts, your insecurities. And while that might seem scary at first, it's actually a gift, because it's only by facing these inner demons that you can overcome them. It's only by acknowledging your fears that you can find the courage to push past them. Isolation also teaches you self-reliance. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to fall into the habit of depending on them for advice, for validation, for support. But when you learn to stand on your own, you develop a strength that can't be shaken by external circumstances. Think about the times in your life when you've grown the most. Chances are, there were times when you were forced to rely on yourself. Maybe it was when you moved to a new city or started a new job or went through a tough breakup. These moments of solitude, while challenging, are also opportunities for immense personal growth. Now, you might be thinking, but what about networking? Isn't that important for success? And yes, networking can open doors. But here's the thing. The best networking doesn't happen at crowded events or noisy parties. It happens when you've already achieved something noteworthy, when you've already become someone worth knowing. Focus on becoming the best version of yourself, on creating something valuable, and the right connections will naturally follow. People are drawn to success, to passion, to excellence. By isolating yourself to focus on your goals, you're actually setting yourself up for more meaningful connections in the long run. Isolation also teaches you to be present. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to get caught up in social dynamics, to be always thinking about what to say next or how you're being perceived. But when you're alone, you have the opportunity to simply be, to fully engage with the present moment without the distractions of social interaction. Think about some of the most inspiring people you know. They're often not the ones who try to fit in or who say what everyone wants to hear. They're the individuals who are unapologetically themselves, who have the courage to express their true thoughts and feelings. And this authenticity, this realness, is often cultivated in moments of... Think about some of the most successful teams in any field. They're not made up of people who are all the same, who always agree with each other. They're composed of strong individuals, each with their own unique strengths, who come together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. And these individual strengths are often developed through periods of solitary focus and dedication. Isolation also teaches you to be comfortable with discomfort. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to avoid difficult emotions or challenging situations. You can always distract yourself with social interaction, with the noise of other people. But when you're alone, you're forced to face your own thoughts, your own fears, your own limitations. Think about some of the most resilient people. They're often not the ones who have had the easiest lives or who have always been surrounded by support. They're individuals who have faced challenges head-on, who have developed inner strength through periods of solitude and self-reflection. Now, you might be thinking, but isn't it lonely to always be alone? And yes, there can be moments of loneliness, but there's a big difference between being lonely and being alone. Loneliness comes from a lack of connection with when you're truly comfortable in your own company, when you're engaged in pursuits that matter to you, loneliness fades away. By embracing isolation, you're learning to enjoy your own company. You're developing a rich inner life that can sustain you even in moments of solitude. And paradoxically, this self-sufficiency often makes you more capable of forming deep, meaningful connections with others when you do choose to socialize. Think about some of the most charismatic people you know. They're often not the ones who are always seeking company, who can't stand to be alone. They're individuals who are comfortable with themselves, who bring a sense of wholeness and self-assurance to their interactions with others. And this charisma, this magnetism, is often developed through periods of solitude and self-discovery. Isolation also teaches you to trust the process. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to get caught up in comparisons, to feel like you're not progressing fast enough. But when you're alone, focused on your work, you learn to trust in your own growth, even when it's not immediately visible. Think about some of the most successful people in any field. They didn't achieve greatness overnight. They spent years working in obscurity, honing their skills, refining their ideas, and it was this willingness to put in the work, to trust the process, even when no one else could see their progress, that ultimately led to their success. By embracing isolation, you're developing the ability to be your own harshest critic and your own biggest supporter. You're learning to trust your own judgment, to set your own standards of excellence. And this self-reliance, this inner compass, is what will guide you to true success. Think about some of the most innovative people in history. They didn't create their groundbreaking works based on popular opinion or market trends. They had a vision that others couldn't yet see, and they had the courage to pursue that vision even when others doubted them. And this courage, this trust in their own ideas, was often developed through periods of solitary exploration and experimentation. Isolation also teaches you to appreciate quality over quantity. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to fall into the trap of measuring success by numbers. How many friends you have, how many likes you get, how many events you attend. But true success isn't about quantity. It's about quality, the depth of your work, the impact of your ideas, the authenticity of your relationships. Think about some of the most respected people in any field. They're often not the ones with the most followers on social media or the busiest social calendars. They're individuals who have created work of lasting value, who have made a significant contribution to their field. And this focus on quality, on substance, is often cultivated in moments of solitude and intense. Now you might be thinking, but won't I miss out on life if I'm always working alone? And it's a valid concern. But here's the thing, you're not missing out on life, you're fully engaging with it. You're choosing to live with purpose, to pursue your passions with intensity, to make the most of your unique talents and abilities. Isolation also teaches you to be self-motivated. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to rely on external motivation. Praise, competition, fear of letting others down. But true success requires internal motivation, the ability to keep pushing yourself even when no one else is watching. Remember, every great leader, every successful entrepreneur, every groundbreaking artist, they all had to learn to be comfortable standing alone. They had to have the courage to pursue their vision, even when no one else believed it. They had to trust their own judgment, even when everyone around them said they were crazy. Think of it like this. Your energy is a finite resource. Every interaction, every conversation, every social obligation takes a piece of that energy. And while some interactions can be energizing, many are simply draining. By carefully guarding your energy, by choosing solitude, you're ensuring that you have the resources you need to pursue your goals with intensity and focus. Consider how you feel after a day of intense socializing versus a day spent in peaceful solitude. While the social day might have been enjoyable, it often leaves you feeling drained. But a day spent alone, focused on your passions, or simply allowing your mind to wander, can leave you feeling energized and inspired. Isolation also allows you to develop a strong sense of self. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to lose sight of who you are. You start to define yourself by your relationships, by how others see you. But true strength, true confidence, comes from knowing who you are independent of anyone else's opinion. Think about the most confident people you know. Chances are they're comfortable being alone. They don't need constant validation from others. They have a strong sense of self that comes from spending time in their own company, from really getting to know them. Now, you might be wondering, but what about love? Don't we need relationships to be happy? And yes, love and connection are important parts of the human experience. But here's the thing. The strongest relationships are formed between two whole, self-sufficient individuals, not two halves, desperately seeking to become whole. Isolation also teaches you to trust your own judgment. When you're constantly seeking advice from others, constantly looking for approval, you lose touch with your own intuition. But when you spend time alone, when you're forced to make decisions without input from others, you develop a strong sense of trust in yourself. Think about some of the biggest regrets people have. Often, they're not about the things they did, but about the things they didn't do. The dreams they didn't pursue because someone told them it was impossible. The risks they didn't take because others said it was too dangerous. By learning to trust your own judgment, you free yourself from these potential regrets. Now, I'm not saying you should never seek advice or consider other perspectives. Wisdom often comes from being open to different viewpoints. But there's a difference between considering advice and blindly following it. True wisdom comes from being able to listen to others, but ultimately trusting your own instincts. Isolation also gives you the freedom to fail. When you're constantly in the public eye, failure can be devastating. The fear of judgment, of letting others down, can paralyze you. But when you're working in solitude, you have the space to experiment, to make mistakes, to learn and grow without the weight of others' expectations. Think about some of the most successful people in any field. They didn't achieve greatness overnight. They spent countless hours practicing, failing, learning, improving, often in solitude. They understood that failure is not the opposite of success, but a necessary step on the path to success. Now, you might be thinking, but won't I miss out on opportunities if I'm always alone? And it's a valid concern. But here's the thing. The best opportunities don't come from constantly being available. They come from being so good at what you do that people can't ignore you. Isolation also teaches you patience. In our instant gratification culture, we're used to getting things immediately. But real success, meaningful success, takes time. It requires the ability to delay gratification, to keep working toward your goals even when you're not seeing immediate results. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to get caught up in comparisons. You see someone else's success and wonder why you're not there yet. But in isolation, you learn to focus on your own journey. You develop the patience to keep working, keep improving, knowing that your time will come. Think about any great work of art, any groundbreaking invention, any successful business. They all required periods of intense focus, of working in obscurity before achieving recognition. By embracing isolation, you're giving yourself the gift of time. Time to develop your skills, to refine your ideas, to create something truly remarkable. Now, you might be wondering, but what about balance? Isn't it important to have a well-rounded life? And yes, balance is important, but here's the thing. True balance doesn't mean dividing your time equally between different areas of your life. It means giving the appropriate amount of time and energy to the things that truly matter to you. If your goal is to create something extraordinary, to leave your mark on the world, then it's okay if your life looks unbalanced to others, because you're in balance with your own priorities, with your own vision for your life. Isolation also allows you to develop a strong work ethic. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to get distracted to procrastinate. But when you're alone, when you've committed to focusing on your goals, you develop the discipline to keep working even when you don't feel like it. Think about some of the most successful people in any field. They all have one thing in common: an incredible work ethic. They're willing to put in the hours to do the hard work that others aren't willing to do. And more often than not, this work happens in solitude. Now, I'm not saying that you should work all the time. Rest and recovery are important parts of the success equation. But even in your downtime, there's value in solitude. It gives you the space to reflect, to process your experiences, to recharge in a way that social activities often don't allow. Isolation also teaches you to be comfortable with uncertainty. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to fall into groupthink, to seek consensus. But true innovation, true success, often lies in the unknown, in the paths less traveled. Think about some of the greatest breakthroughs in history. They didn't come from people following the crowd. They came from individuals who were willing to question the status quo, to explore ideas that others dismissed as impossible. And more often than not, this exploration happened in solitude. Now, you might be thinking, but won't I become self-centered if I'm always focused on myself? And it's a valid concern. But here's the thing. True self-focus isn't about being selfish. It's about becoming the best version of yourself so that you can make a greater contribution to the world. Think about some of the most fulfilled people you know. They're often not the ones with the most varied experiences or the most extensive social networks. They're individuals who have found their passion, who are fully engaged in work that matters to them. And this sense of purpose, this deep engagement with life, is often cultivated through periods of solitary focus and dedication. Think about some of the most generous, impactful people in history. They weren't people who constantly sought the approval of others. They were individuals who had a clear vision, who were willing to stand alone in pursuit of that vision. And because of their dedication, they were able to create change on a massive scale. Isolation also teaches you to find joy in the process, not just the outcome. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to get caught up in external validation, in achieving goals just to impress people. But when you're alone, when you're truly focused on your work, you learn to find satisfaction in the act of creation itself. By embracing isolation, you're creating the conditions for these moments of insight. You're giving your mind the space it needs to make unexpected connections, to see patterns that others miss. You're allowing your creativity to flourish without the constraints of groupthink or social expectations. Isolation also teaches you to be resourceful. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to fall into the habit of relying on them for help, for answers. But when you're alone, you're forced to figure things out for yourself. You develop problem-solving skills that will serve you well throughout your life. Think about some of the most successful entrepreneurs. They didn't succeed because they always had someone to turn to for answers. They succeeded because they were willing to tackle problems head-on, to find solutions even when it seemed impossible. And this resourcefulness was often developed in moments of solitude, when they had no choice but to rely on their own abilities. By embracing isolation, you're training yourself to be self-reliant. You're developing the confidence to face challenges, knowing that you have the inner resources to overcome them. And this self-reliance is a key ingredient in any success story. Now, you might be thinking, but won't I become inflexible if I'm always working alone? And it's a valid concern. But here's the thing. True flexibility doesn't come from constantly adapting to others. It comes from having a strong sense of self, from knowing your values and priorities, and being able to adapt without losing sight of who you are. By spending time alone, by really getting to know yourself, you're actually developing the kind of inner strength that allows for true flexibility. You're becoming someone who can collaborate effectively when needed, but who doesn't lose themselves in the process. Think about some of the most adaptable people you know. Chances are they're not people who are constantly seeking approval or changing themselves to fit in. They're individuals with a strong sense of self who are comfortable in their own skin. And this comfort, this self-assurance, often comes from spending time alone. Isolation also teaches you to appreciate silence. In our noisy world, we're often uncomfortable with quiet. We fill every moment with sound, with activity. But it's in silence that we often find our deepest insights, our most profound realization. Think about some of the most insightful people you know. They're often the ones who are comfortable with silence, who don't feel the need to fill every moment with chatter. They've learned to listen, not just to others, but to their own inner voice. And this ability to listen, to truly hear themselves, is often developed in solitude. Now, you might be wondering, but what about happiness? Don't we need social connections to be happy? And yes, human connection is important for well-being. But true happiness, lasting happiness, comes from within. It comes from knowing yourself, from pursuing your passions, from living in alignment with your values. By embracing isolation, you're giving yourself the opportunity to develop this inner happiness. You're learning to find joy in your own company, to derive satisfaction from your own achievements. And paradoxically, this self-contained happiness often makes you more attractive to others, more capable of forming genuine connections when you do choose to socialize. Think about some of the happiest people you know. They're often not the ones with the busiest social calendars or the most friends on social media. They're individuals who are comfortable with themselves, who have a sense of purpose, who are actively pursuing their goals. And this kind of happiness, this inner contentment, is often cultivated in moments of solitude. By embracing isolation, you're training yourself to be more mindful, more aware. You're developing the ability to focus deeply, to immerse yourself fully in whatever you're doing. And this presence, this ability to concentrate, is a key factor in achieving excellence in any field. Think about some of the most accomplished people in any area. They're often described as having an intense focus, an ability to block out distractions and give their full attention to the task at hand. And this ability is often developed through periods of solitude, of working alone with single-minded dedication. Now, you might be thinking, but won't I become selfish if I'm always focused on my own goals? And it's a valid concern. But here's the thing. True selflessness doesn't come from constantly putting others first. It comes from developing yourself to the fullest so that you have more to give. By embracing isolation, by focusing intensely on your own growth and development, you're actually preparing yourself to make a greater contribution to the world. You're becoming someone who has something unique and valuable to offer. Think about some of the most altruistic people in history. They weren't people who constantly sought the approval of others or who always put their own needs last. They were individuals with a strong sense of purpose, who were willing to stand alone in pursuit of their vision. And because of their dedication, they were able to create positive change on a massive scale. Isolation also teaches you to be authentic. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to fall into the trap of trying to please everyone, of molding yourself to fit others' expectations. But when you're alone, you have the freedom to be truly yourself without fear of judgment or criticism. Now, you might be wondering, but what about teamwork? Isn't that important for success? And yes, in many fields, collaboration is crucial. But here's the thing. The most effective team members are often those who have developed their individual strengths to the highest level. They're people who bring something unique to the table, who can contribute in ways that no one else can. By embracing isolation, by focusing intensely on developing your own skills and talents, you're actually preparing yourself to be a more valuable team member. You're becoming someone who can make a significant contribution rather than just going along with the group. By embracing isolation, you're developing emotional resilience. You're learning to sit with discomfort, to work through challenges rather than avoiding them. And this ability to handle discomfort, to push through difficulties, is a key factor in achieving any significant goal. By embracing isolation, you're giving yourself the gift of patience. You're learning to keep working, keep improving, even when you're not seeing immediate results. You're developing the kind of long-term perspective that's essential for achieving. Now, you might be wondering, but what about feedback? Don't we need others' perspectives to improve? And yes, feedback can be valuable, but the most important feedback comes from within. It comes from your own honest assessment of your work, from your own commitment to excellence. By embracing isolation, you're giving yourself the opportunity to focus on quality. You're creating space to do deep work, to refine your ideas, to create something truly meaningful. You're choosing depth over breadth, substance over superficial. By embracing isolation, you're not retreating from life. You're diving deeper into it. You're choosing to live deliberately, to make every moment count. You're creating a life of meaning and purpose rather than simply going through the motions or following the crowd. By embracing isolation, you're developing this inner drive. You're learning to set your own goals, to hold yourself accountable, to keep working even when you don't feel like it. You're becoming someone who doesn't need external validation or constant supervision to stay on track. Think about some of the most disciplined people you know. They're often not the ones who need constant reminders or external rewards to stay motivated. They're individuals who have developed a strong sense of purpose, who are driven by their own goals and values. And this self-motivation, this inner discipline, is often developed through periods of solitary work and self-reflection. By embracing isolation, you're actually creating the space for true balance. You're giving yourself the opportunity to focus deeply on what's most important to you without the constant distractions and demands of social interaction. You're choosing to live in alignment with your values and priorities, rather than being pulled in multiple directions by others' expectations. By embracing isolation, you're developing the ability to be fully present, to engage deeply with your work and your life. You're learning to shut out distractions and dive deep into whatever you're doing, whether it's solving a complex problem, creating a work of art, or simply enjoying a moment of peace. Think about some of the most effective people you know. They're often not the ones who are constantly multitasking or jumping from one thing to another. They're individuals who have the ability to focus deeply, to give their full attention to the task. And this ability to be present, to focus deeply, is often cultivated in moments of solitude. Now, you might be wondering, but what about the future? Shouldn't we be planning and preparing? And yes, planning is important, but true effectiveness comes from being fully engaged in the present moment, from bringing your best self to whatever you're doing right now. By embracing isolation, you're not ignoring the future. You're actually preparing for it in the most effective way possible. By fully engaging with the present, you're developing skills, creating work, and growing in ways that will shape your future far more powerfully than any amount of worrying or planning ever could. Think about some of the most successful people you know. They didn't achieve their success by constantly worrying about the future or trying to plan for every possibility. They achieved it by fully committing to their work in the present moment, by consistently bringing their best selves to whatever they were doing. Isolation also teaches you to trust yourself. In a world full of conflicting advice and opinions, isolation gives you the space to listen to your own inner voice. You learn to trust your own judgment, to follow your own path, even when it diverges from what others expect or advise. By embracing isolation, you're developing a deep trust in yourself. You're learning to listen to your own intuition, to make decisions based on your own values and priorities rather than external pressures. You're becoming someone who can stand firm in their convictions, even in the face of opposition or doubt. Think about some of the most authentic people you know. They're often not the ones who are constantly seeking advice or approval from others. They're individuals who have a strong sense of who they are and what they stand for, who are able to make decisions and take action based on their own inner compass. And this authenticity, this self-trust, is often developed through periods of solitude and self-reflection. Now, you might be thinking, but isn't this all a bit extreme? Surely we need some balance. And yes, balance is important, but true balance isn't about dividing your time equally between different activities. It's about aligning your life with your values and priorities. By embracing isolation, you're not rejecting connection or collaboration. You're creating the space to develop yourself fully, so that when you do connect and collaborate, you can do so from a place of strength and authenticity. You're choosing to invest in yourself to develop your unique gifts and talents, so that you can make a greater contribution to the world. Think about some of the most balanced people you know. They're often not the ones who are constantly trying to do everything and please everyone. They're individuals who have a clear sense of what matters most to them, who are willing to say no to things that don't align with their values and goals. And this clarity, this ability to prioritize, is often developed through periods of solitude and self. In the end, Embracing isolation isn't about cutting yourself off from the world. It's about creating the space you need to become your best self. It's about developing the inner strength, the self-reliance, the deep focus that will allow you to make your unique contribution to the world. Remember, the greatest achievements in history didn't come from people who were always surrounded by others, always seeking approval or validation. They came from individuals who were willing to stand alone, to pursue their vision with single-minded focus, to do the deep, solitary work that true excellence requires. So don't be afraid of isolation. Embrace it. Use it as a tool for growth, for self-discovery, for achieving your highest potential. Because when you learn to stand alone, when you develop the strength and focus that come from embracing isolation, the world doesn't need more followers, more people who are always looking to others for direction or validation. The world needs leaders, innovators, creators, people who have developed their unique gifts and are ready to share them with the world. And that's what embracing isolation can do for you. It can help you become that leader, that innovator, that creator. It can help you develop the strength, the focus, the self-reliance that will allow you to make your unique mark on the world. So take the time you need. Focus on your goals. Develop your skills. Trust your own judgment. Embrace the power of isolation. Because when you do, you'll discover that you have everything you need within you to achieve extraordinary things. The path to true success, to meaningful achievement, often leads through periods of solitude. It requires the courage to stand alone, to trust your own vision even when others don't understand it. It demands the discipline to keep working, keep improving even when no one else can see your progress. But if you have that courage, if you're willing to embrace isolation and use it as a tool for growth, there's no limit to what you can achieve. You have within you the power to create, to innovate, to lead. You have the ability to make a real difference in the world. So don't shy away from isolation. Don't fear solitude. Embrace it. Use it. Let it be the crucible in which you forge your greatest self. Because when you do, you'll find that you're not really alone at all. You're in the company of every great thinker, every innovator, every leader who has ever changed the world. Now, I'm not saying you should cut yourself off from the world entirely. Interactions with others can provide inspiration, different perspectives. But it's about finding the right balance. It's about recognizing when you need to step away and focus on yourself. But here's the thing. It's not really missing out. Because while others are busy socializing, you're busy growing. You're busy becoming the person you want to be. You're busy creating a life that others will envy. Think about some of the most successful people in history. Many of them were considered outcast loners. They didn't fit in with the crowd, but that's precisely what allowed them to think differently, to innovate, to change the world. By learning to be comfortable alone, by developing a strong sense of self, you're actually setting yourself up for healthier, more fulfilling relationships in the future. Because you'll be coming from a place of choice, not need. You'll be able to give love freely without expecting anything in return because you'll already be complete in yourself. Now, you might be wondering, but what about balance? Isn't it important to have a well-rounded life? And yes, balance is important, but true balance isn't about dividing your time equally between different areas of your life. It's about giving the appropriate amount of time and energy to the things that truly matter to you. Think about some of the most balanced people you know. They're often not the ones who are constantly busy, who are trying to do everything and please everyone. They're individuals who have a clear sense of what matters most to them, who are willing to say no to things that don't align with their values and goals. And this clarity, this ability to prioritize, is often developed through periods of solitude. You're on the path to becoming your best self, to making your unique contribution to the world. And that journey, that process of growth and self-discovery is the most exciting, most fulfilling adventure you can embark on. So step into your power. Embrace your solitude. Focus on your goals with single-minded determination. Because when you do, you'll discover that you don't need friends to succeed. You have everything you need within you. You are enough. You are powerful. You are capable of extraordinary things. And the world is waiting for what only you can create.